Hey you, Tarnished, are you tired of being smashed into the ground by the forces of evil in the lands between? Would you like to Uno reverse that shit back on your opponents? Well, stick around and I'll show you the best way to destroy anyone that you want with one of Elden Ring's most underused features. The guard counter. This ability was kinda nerfed due to the fact that it was massively overpowered due to the minimal stamina drain that blocking had in the past. But with Shadows of the Erdtree DLC, guard poking and countering has become a very powerful way to make your way through the new content. Is it the overall strongest build in the game? Of course not. This build is meant to be a combo of both the ability for you to survive in certain situations that others would not be able to, and with the added ability to poise break and destroy enemies that would not easily be able to make it through your shield. And yes, this also includes most of the bosses in the game. I'll be showing this powerful build and what it looks like on both a level 150 character and what it looks like on a 500 plus character. Also a few variations. With that being said, let's get into it. Our first build will be a bit counterintuitive, but I personally really love the design of the build. So this here is the look and standard setup for the build. First off, our weapon is going to be the Black Steel Great Hammer, which is dropped by a knight in the Church of Consolidation. This weapon is great in many ways, but its greatest aspect for this particular build is its ability to increase guard counters, causing a bit of a holy explosion on the ground when it is used. The Ash of War that we're going to put into this build is going to be the Flaming Strike Ash of War. This is for a couple of reasons. One, it hits really hard when you account for faith, and two, will be revealed later in this video. So with the shield, you have a couple of options. The best for most fights is the fingerprint shield. With certain buffs or just setting the shield to certain elements, you can block almost 100% of a damage type that you're going up against. However, that is not the case with holy damage, so I suggest switching to the Black Steel Great Shield with the Sacred Affinity on it, so that in fights against characters like the final boss of the DLC and the Elden Beast, you can swat away that damage like a wet paper towel. Also, you've got the downside of using the fingerprint shield. It lowers your overall power due to the amount of strength needed to use the shield. However, this build is still quite powerful. Now for the armor. The helmet I use for this build is the Fire Knight helm, for its Erdtree's favor-like effect, so that I won't have to waste a talisman slot on being able to wear heavier armor. As for the chest down, I personally use Radahn's Lion armor, Crucible gloves, and pants. However, wear as heavy or as light as you prefer, as long as you stay in the medium category, for those times you get real close to losing your stamina. For role-playing purposes, you can just wear the Black Steel Knight gear to be one of the Mesmer's finest. Now, to where the power comes from, the talismans that are needed in order to bring this build online. First one is, of course, the Shard of Alexander for that sweet 15% boost to our skill damage. Onto the second talisman needed, the one and only Fire Scorpion Charm for that 12% fire damage buff. And now you can see why we chose Flaming Strike. This combo is devastating and adds way more punch to our guard counters than we had before. The fact that we can take 10% extra damage is offset by the fact that we will be blocking all of the damage we would be taking if we're doing our job right. Now when it comes to any guard counter build, we need the Curved Sword Talisman, which increases the damage of guard counters by 20% for a massive damage output on top of the already buffed weapon. For the last talisman, I'm going to go with the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman for its 22.5% faster stamina recovery. That way, with the demand this build has on our stamina bar, we can take a moment to quickly refill it. Another option would be the Great Shield Talisman that lowers stamina damage taken by another 20% over what the shield itself already gives you. However, for the 150 build, if you went heavy in strength for the ability to use the fingerprint Great Shield, you can even use the Two Fingers Heirloom for some extra faith to boost the damage on your weapon. Well, we've got our talismans picked out, but what do we still need? That's it. The buffs that will tie this build up in a nice knot. Well, spells are easy for the 150 build. It's literally just Golden Vow, of course, for its 15% damage boost and its 10% damage negation, and Flame Grant Me Strength for its 20% bonus to both physical and fire damage. However, for the level 500 build, you can add Scholar's Shield for an additional 35 stamina damage reduction and 30% straight up damage negation, massively increasing your survivability. We are to our last set of buffs before we talk stats, and that would be our Wondrous Physics. What goes into that, you might say? Well, if you feel like you're still not doing enough damage, then may I suggest the Flame Shrouding Cracked tier. If taking damage is a problem, I'd suggest 15% damage negation for 3 whole minutes using the Opaline Hard tier. What if I want to do more poise damage? Well, then how about you use the Stone Barb Cracked tier for 30% stance damage increase, but hit them fast because you only have 30 seconds with this buff. However, despite all that, one tier that you need in this build is the Deflecting Hard tier. This one's a bit tricky to pull off, but if done right, by blocking at the exact moment an opponent attacks, it will make your next guard guard counter do an additional 20% damage on top of the curved swords talisman, and also do a lot of stance damage to your opponent. This one tier is what made guard counter builds viable again. And if you're any good at Sekiro or the parry system in this game, it'll be very easy for you to learn how to use this tier properly. On to the last part of our video, the stats used to put it all together. When you get to the 500 plus category, just make sure you have adequate vigor, then max out all the important stats like strength, faith, endurance, with plenty of mind. However, when you are at level 150, you have to get a bit more choicey with your stat spread. So what should we look at here? Let's make our way down the list, and first up is vigor. 60 is often considered just a base for what you need for most builds these days, so let's just put that there. Next up is mind. Personally, I like to bring mine up to about 17, which will allow me to cast all my buffs and at least a couple casts of my Ash of War before needing to drink some of that blue drink. As primarily a tank build, we need a lot of endurance in order to wear all the gear that we need to not get stomped. So I bring my endurance up to a staggering 55. And now we reach our first moment of contention in the stats. I have strength so high in order to use the fingerprint shield. However, other great shields can work for this build. So if you're okay with a less all-arounder shield, you can easily lower this stat from a 48 to a 35 to have more points to play with. Dexterity, on the other hand, only needs to be at 11 in order to use the Black Steel Great Hammer. Intelligence can stay at whatever level your starting class was at. Mine's 10. For the higher level build, you only really need 12 to cast Scholar's Shield. Your faith stat needs to be high enough to cast Golden Vow, and this is where I'd put my extra points from strength. If you don't use the fingerprint shield at the moment, mine is boosted by Godric's Great Rune and sits at 28, but without it, it's at 23, which is another reason to use the 2-finger heirloom in the 150 build. And Arcane can just stay at base, which for me is also a 10. Well guys, that's it for the build. This has been my first build. Let me know if it works for you in the comment section below. I know I'm interested in making more of these builds in the future, so keep your eyes open for future videos. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can see when I drop new videos in the future. And I hope to see you in those also. With that being said, I'd like to thank my members. At the Elden Lord level, we have Noah, and that's it. After the Elden Lord level, we've got the Demigod level, and well, here we go. Sun Havoc Jr., Gray, Cars Scooby, Lamba Biblo, Mimi Calpio, Jack DeVol, Dark Kitty, Kermit, Mecha, Chocolate Milk, Dagger 66, Alabas, sorry but I can't pronounce that, Amanda Hammond, Grim GG, Arrow, The Johnny Boy, Biggest and the Truth, Ghost Hunter TV, Darkness, Donald Rich, Maddykins, Henry, Grim Keith, The Potato Nader, B Walker 8732, Sideswipe, Kiddom 804, Joseph Money, Murphy Great, King Baby Seal III, The Unkindled Tarnished, and Philip Guerrero. If you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and become a member also, and we'll see you again next time.